The desert sun beat down mercilessly as Elizabeth stumbled forward, her wedding dress torn and stained with the dust of exile. Banished by her own people for a sin she didn't commit, she collapsed at the border of Apache territory, a death sentence in itself, according to settler wisdom. But death did not come. Instead, gentle hands lifted her broken body, and unfamiliar voices spoke in tones of compassion rather than judgment. The Apache people, feared by settlers as savages, saw something in her that her own kind had missed, her spirit that refused to be broken despite her wounds. In their hidden canyon, they didn't just offer shelter, they offered belonging. What would happen when the Apache medicine man discovered her deepest secret? One that could either cement her place among them or force her back into the unforgiving desert. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elizabeth clutched the silver locket against her chest as jeers and accusations filled the air around her. The small, oval pendant, containing the only remaining image of her mother, was the sole possession they had allowed her to keep. "Unclean!" they shouted. "Broken!" The words cut deeper than the stones some had wished to throw. Just yesterday, she had been Elizabeth Hayward, hopeful bride of Thomas Willoughby, son of the settlement's founder. Today, she was nameless, condemned, a cautionary tale for young girls who might consider straying from virtue's path. If only they knew the truth. "You have deceived my son and brought shame to two good families," Elder Willoughby proclaimed, his voice carrying across the gathering. "You presented yourself as pure, but were found wanting." Elizabeth's gaze remained fixed on the dusty ground. There was no defense they would accept. How could she explain that 6 months ago, returning from gathering herbs, Reverend Clark had honored her in the storage shed? How his hand had covered her mouth while the other tore at her skirts? How afterward he had straightened his collar and reminded her that no one would believe a girl whose mother had died in scandal and whose father drowned his grief in whiskey. She had carried the secret, praying that somehow marriage would cover her shame. But the wedding night revealed everything. Thomas's rage had brought the household running. By morning, she stood before the settlement's council, her new husband refusing to look at her, the Reverend standing solemnly among the elders, passing judgment. "As she cannot be a true wife and has entered into marriage under false pretenses, this union is dissolved," announced Elder Willoughby. "And as her deception reveals a corrupted character that may taint our godly community, she is hereby banished." Her father, sober for once but defeated, had not spoken in her defense. No one had. They had allowed her to keep her wedding dress, a final mockery, and the locket. Nothing else. Not water, not food, not even a knife for protection. The desert would be her executioner, removing the stain of her existence from there. Righteous community. The first day, Elizabeth had followed the creek, drinking when thirsty, moving east away from the settlement. By the second day, the water was gone, the creek bed dry. The third day brought delirium as the sun scorched her fair skin and parched her lips. Her wedding dress, once white and hopeful, became a shroud of dust and sweat. Somewhere in that haze of heat and thirst, she had stumbled upon an eagle feather, its presence incongruous in the barren landscape. Elizabeth had tucked it into her bodice alongside the locket, a talisman of hope when hope seemed foolish. By the fourth day, she no longer knew which direction she traveled. The mountains swam in her vision, and the desert floor tilted beneath her feet. Her thoughts turned to her mother, who had died giving birth to a stillborn son when Elizabeth was 12. The scandal had been her father's subsequent collapse into drink and neglect, leaving Elizabeth to raise herself amid whispers and pity. "Mother," she whispered to the merciless sky, "I'm coming to you now." When she could walk no further, Elizabeth collapsed, the torn hem of her wedding dress billowing briefly in the hot wind before settling into the dust. Above her, wings cast a moving shadow, an eagle or a vulture, she couldn't tell. It seemed fitting that birds of prey would be her final companions. She closed her eyes, fingers wrapped around the silver locket, waiting for the end. She didn't see the approaching Apache hunters, didn't hear their surprised exclamations, didn't feel their cautious hands checking for life. Elizabeth Hayward, the broken bride, had surrendered to darkness, unaware that her journey was not ending, but transforming, in ways she could never have imagined. The eagle circled overhead, its shadow passing over the motionless form in white. 4 Apache hunters stopped their tracking to watch the bird's deliberate pattern. "A sign," whispered White Bear, the eldest of the hunting party. "The eagle does not circle for nothing." Swift Fox, youngest of the 4 at 20 summers, followed. The eagle's gaze downward. "There," he pointed to a pale shape against the red earth. "Something lies there." They approached cautiously, weapons ready. The border between Apache land and settler territory was no place for carelessness. When they discovered it was a white woman, barely breathing in a tattered dress, the hunters exchanged troubled glances. "A settler woman," Black Wolf said with contempt. "Left here perhaps as a trap." "No," Swift Fox crouched beside her. "She is alone and dying." He gently turned her face. Despite the sunburn and cracked lips, her features were delicate. "She carries no weapon." "It is not our concern," Running Elk, the 4th hunter, advised. "The whites bring only trouble. Leave her to the fate her own people chose." Swift Fox noticed something protruding from the woman's bodice. Carefully, he extracted an eagle feather, the same pattern of markings as the bird still circling above. "Look," he held it up, "she carries eagle medicine." White Bear took the feather, examining it with weathered fingers. "This came from a guardian spirit. It is from the same eagle that watches now." He looked up at the great bird. "This is not chance." Black Wolf remained skeptical. "Even so, what business is she of ours? The whites would not help one of our women. We are not white men," Swift Fox said simply. "Our ways are not their ways." The men fell silent, the weight of decision upon them. To leave her meant certain death. To take her meant risk. "I will carry her," Swift Fox finally declared. "If the council decides she cannot stay, I will return her beyond our borders, but I will not leave her to die when the eagle has marked her." White Bear nodded slowly. "The spirits have brought her to us for a purpose. We will bring her to White Hawk. He will know what the eagle speaks." Black Wolf's expression darkened, but he did not argue further. The medicine man's wisdom was not to be questioned lightly. Swift Fox lifted the woman, surprised at how little she weighed. Her body burned with fever, yet she shivered. The eagle feather he carefully returned to her, tucking it securely beside what appeared to be a silver ornament she clutched, even in unconsciousness. The journey back to the hidden canyon was arduous. They traveled swiftly, aware that the woman's life depended on reaching the settlement before nightfall. The eagle followed their progress for a time before disappearing over the ridge that concealed the entrance to Apache lands. As they navigated the narrow pass that led to their home, the woman stirred briefly in Swift Fox's arms. Her eyes, the color of the summer sky, opened momentarily, widening with fear before exhaustion claimed her again. Something in that fleeting gaze touched Swift Fox deeply. Not just fear, but a profound sorrow that seemed too heavy for one so young to bear. The hidden canyon opened before them as the sun began its descent, painting the high mesas gold and crimson. The Apache settlement, nestled against the protective canyon walls, came to life with the evening meal preparations. Smoke from cooking fires rose in thin columns. Children playing near the stream spotted the returning hunters and ran to announce their arrival. "Prepare for White Hawk," White Bear instructed a young boy. "We bring one who needs his wisdom." Swift Fox carried the unconscious woman into the settlement. Her white dress now stained with the red dust of their journey. He felt the curious and concerned eyes of his people. He did not know why, but he was certain the eagle had led them to her for a reason that would change them all. Elizabeth awoke to unfamiliar sensations, soft animal hides beneath her instead of hard desert ground, the scent of herbs and smoke rather than dust and despair. Her parched throat ached. For a moment, she thought she might have died and reached some unexpected afterlife. A wrinkled face appeared above her, dark eyes set in a web of lines that spoke of years under the sun. The elderly Apache woman studied Elizabeth with a mixture of curiosity and concern, speaking words in a language Elizabeth couldn't understand. Fear surged through her weakened body. She was among the Apache, those her settlement called savages and murderers. She tried to rise, but found her strength gone. The old woman pressed a smooth clay bowl to Elizabeth's lips. Cool water touched her cracked skin, and despite her fear, thirst overcame caution. She drank deeply until the woman pulled the bowl away, speaking again in soft tones while shaking her head. "Slowly," the woman said, one of the few English words she seemed to know. Slowly. Elizabeth nodded weakly, understanding the wisdom. Too much water too quickly would make her sick. The woman offered the bowl again, and this time Elizabeth sipped carefully, savoring each drop. When she had finished, the woman set the clay bowl beside the sleeping mat. Its surface was unglazed but polished smooth, decorated with simple geometric patterns in red and black. Unlike the heavy pottery of the settlement, it felt alive somehow, as though the earth itself had willingly shaped it. "Thank you," Elizabeth whispered. The woman touched her own chest. "Morning sky," she said slowly, then pointed to Elizabeth with raised eyebrows. "Elizabeth," she replied, then touched the bowl. "Bowl, water." Morning Sky nodded, repeating the words carefully before touching the bowl again and saying something in Apache. An exchange of languages, a small bridge built between worlds. Over the next hours, Morning Sky tended to Elizabeth, applying a cooling salve to her sunburned skin and helping her eat small bites of unfamiliar but nourishing food. The clay bowl remained close by, refilled whenever empty. It became Elizabeth's anchor to this new reality, a tangible sign of unexpected kindness. When Elizabeth finally felt strong enough to stand, Morning Sky helped her dress in a simple deerskin shift to replace the ruined wedding gown. The old woman carefully set aside the silver locket and eagle feather, seeming to understand their importance without explanation. "Come," Morning Sky said, gesturing toward the dwelling's entrance. Elizabeth took her first steps into the Apache village. Leaning on the older woman's arm, sunlight revealed a scene utterly unlike anything she had imagined. The settlement nestled within the protective embrace of towering red canyon walls. Dwellings of various sizes stood in harmonious arrangement, some constructed of brush and hides, others more permanent structures partially recessed into the canyon wall. People moved with purpose, women weaving or preparing food, men crafting weapons or repairing tools, children running with the serious intent of their play. When they noticed Elizabeth, activities paused briefly. Not with the hostility she expected, but with the natural caution of a people who had learned wariness of outsiders. A group of men stood in discussion near the center of the village. Among them, Elizabeth recognized the young Apache who had carried her. He noticed her gaze and nodded slightly. Morning Sky guided her toward them. As they approached, the men fell silent. One stepped forward, older than the others, his face a map of experience, his bearing commanding respect. "This is Chief Tall Pine," Morning Sky explained in halting English. Elizabeth, remembering settlement protocols for authority, attempted a respectful nod. The pain in her head made her sway slightly. The chief spoke, his words translated by another man. "You have entered Apache land. Why?" The directness of the question caught Elizabeth off guard. Before she could formulate a response that wouldn't seem like a plea for pity, another figure approached, an elderly man with a presence that seemed to extend beyond his physical form. She came on eagle wings, the newcomer said in perfect English, "and we will hear her story when she's ready to tell it." The medicine man who had spoken perfect English introduced himself as White Hawk. Unlike the others who regarded Elizabeth with caution, his eyes held recognition as though he'd been expecting her. "The council must decide what to do with you," Chief Tallpine stated through the translator. "It is unusual for a white woman to be in our lands." "I did not intend to trespass," Elizabeth said, her voice still rough from days without water. "I was—" She hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't reveal her shame. "Lost." White Hawk studied her face. "The desert does not bring people to our hidden canyon by accident," he said. "The eagle guided our hunters to you. This has meaning." The council members exchanged glances. The young hunter who had carried her, Swift Fox, she would later learn, stepped forward. "She carried an eagle feather," he explained, producing it from a small pouch. "The same eagle that circled above her follows still. It watches from the canyon rim even now." White Hawk took the feather, holding it up to catch the light. His eyes closed momentarily, his breathing deepening. When he opened them again, he looked at Elizabeth with certainty. "You must come with me," he said, not to the council, but directly to her. Morning Sky helped Elizabeth follow as White Hawk led them to a small cave set apart from the other dwellings. Inside, fragrant herbs hung from the ceiling, and a small fire burned in a central pit, filling the space with aromatic smoke. "Sit," White Hawk instructed, pointing to a woven mat opposite him across the fire. As Elizabeth settled herself, still weak from her ordeal, White Hawk began sorting through various bundles and pouches. He selected several items: small bones, oud-colored stones, the eagle feather, and arranged them in a pattern only he understood. "I have seen you in my dreams," he said without preamble, "a pale woman wrapped in white, walking between worlds. The spirits have been speaking of your coming for many moons." Elizabeth's heart quickened. "There must be some mistake. I'm nobody." "Important," White Hawk shook his head. "The spirits do not make mistakes. They see what we cannot." He sprinkled something into the fire that caused it to flare briefly with blue-green flames. "You carry great sorrow, but also great strength. Both are needed." He rose and moved to the cave entrance, beckoning her to follow. Outside, he pointed to a gnarled juniper tree growing improbably from the canyon wall. "See how it thrives where others would perish," he said. "Its roots find nourishment in the smallest cracks. Its branches bend, but do not break in the strongest winds. This is your spirit." White Hawk approached the tree and carefully broke off a small branch. He bound it with sinew and a single bead of turquoise. "From this day, you will be known as Daughter of the Juniper," he proclaimed, placing the branch in her hands. "You will live between two worlds, with roots in both." Elizabeth stared at the juniper branch, its green needles pungent and alive against her palm. "I don't understand." "Understanding will come," White Hawk assured her. "For now it is enough that you are here and alive." They returned to the council, where White Hawk addressed the gathered leaders in Apache, occasionally gesturing toward Elizabeth. She could not understand his words, but their effect was evident in the changing expressions of the council members: surprise, skepticism, and finally, reluctant acceptance. Chief Tallpine approached her when White Hawk had finished. "Our medicine. Man says the spirits have brought you to us for a purpose," he said through the translator. "He has named you Daughter of the Juniper and says you must learn our ways." Black Wolf, one of the hunters who had found her, spoke sharply. The translator hesitated before conveying his words. "Some think this unwise. A white woman among us could bring trouble from your people." "My people cast me out," Elizabeth said quietly, clutching the juniper branch. "They left me to die." This statement required no translation. The universal language of abandonment was understood by all. "Then you will stay with Morning Sky," the chief decided. "She will teach you our ways. When the next moon is full, we will speak again of your place among us." Morning Sky's dwelling became Elizabeth's sanctuary in the days that followed. The elderly woman proved to be a patient teacher, despite the language barrier. Each morning began with simple tasks: grinding corn between stones, weaving yucca fibers into useful items, preparing food that Elizabeth had never encountered in the settlement. One morning, Morning Sky presented Elizabeth with a slender bone needle and a length of sinew. She demonstrated how to pierce the edges of 2 pieces of deer hide, then join them with neat, tight stitches. When Elizabeth's first attempts proved clumsy, Morning Sky simply undid the work and guided her hands again, never showing frustration. "Good hands," the old woman nodded approvingly when Elizabeth finally completed a small pouch. "Strong spirit." Elizabeth placed the bone needle and remaining sinew in the clay water bowl that had become her personal possession. These simple tools represented something profound, the beginning of self-sufficiency in this new world. The children of the tribe initially kept their distance, watching her with wide, wary eyes. Elizabeth didn't blame them. She imagined the stories they'd been told about white settlers. One small girl, perhaps 5 years old, was braver than the others. She approached while Elizabeth sat outside Morning Sky's dwelling sorting herbs. "Hair. Like sun," the child said in halting English, pointing to Elizabeth's blonde locks. Elizabeth smiled. "Would you like to touch it?" The girl reached out hesitantly, then giggled when she felt the unfamiliar texture. She ran back to her friends, and soon a small circle of curious children had formed, each taking turns to carefully touch Elizabeth's hair or examine her pale skin. By the week's end, the children would call out greetings when they saw her. Their acceptance came more easily than that of the adults, who remained cautious, though not unkind. Swift Fox visited regularly, bringing fresh game or interesting items he thought might help Elizabeth learn their ways. Unlike many others, he made efforts to communicate, teaching her Apache words and phrases while improving his own limited English. "My grandfather traded with whites," he explained during one visit. "He taught me some words before joining the ancestors." Elizabeth found herself looking forward to these visits. Swift Fox's face, though bearing a scar from cheek to jaw, was handsome in its openness and honesty. His eyes held no judgment for what she might have been before coming to the canyon. "Why did they leave you?" he asked one evening, as they sat outside, watching the sunset paint the canyon walls. "Your people." Elizabeth tensed. The question she had dreaded. "They believed I had done something shameful," she answered carefully. "But you did not?" "No." The single word carried the weight of all she couldn't yet explain. Swift Fox nodded, accepting her answer without pressing further. "Among Apache, a person is judged by what they do, not what others say about them." This simple statement brought unexpected tears to Elizabeth's eyes. Swift Fox politely looked away, allowing her privacy in her emotion. Later that night, after Swift Fox had gone, Elizabeth sat with Morning Sky by the small fire in her dwelling. The old woman was showing her how to use the bone needle to create more complex stitches for decorative purposes. "Swift Fox is good man," Morning Sky said, her English improving through their daily exchanges. "Good heart." Elizabeth felt her cheeks warm, and not from the fire. "He has been kind to me." Morning Sky's weathered face creased in a knowing smile. "He sees your spirit, not just your white skin." She paused, then added, "Black Wolf does not. Be careful." "Black Wolf doesn't want me here," Elizabeth acknowledged, remembering the dark looks from the warrior who had argued against bringing her to the canyon. "Fear makes anger," Morning Sky explained. "He fears change. You are change." As Elizabeth practiced the new stitches, she considered these words. She represented change, not just for the Apache, but for herself. With each new skill learned, each word of Apache she spoke, she moved further from the Elizabeth who had been cast out in a tattered wedding dress. The bone needle and sinew in her hands were more than tools. They were the instruments of her transformation. 3 weeks into Elizabeth's stay with the Apache, she had established a routine. Each morning, She joined the women at the stream, learning to wash clothes and gather water. In the afternoons, Morning Sky taught her useful skills: cooking, weaving, identifying medicinal plants. The evenings often brought storytelling around, communal fires, where she struggled to understand the Apache language but enjoyed the animated expressions and occasional translations. It was during one such evening that Black Wolf made his contempt unmistakable. As Elizabeth sat quietly beside Morning Sky, he approached, deliberately placing himself directly in her line of sight. The stone knife at his belt was prominently displayed, his hand resting on its handle in what couldn't be mistaken for anything but a warning. "The white woman understands our stories now," he asked in Apache, which Swift Fox translated from nearby. "Perhaps she will take them back to her people, along with knowledge of our canyon's location." Elizabeth felt the weight of eyes upon her. "I have told no one of your kindness," she replied through Swift Fox. "I have nowhere else to go." Black Wolf drew the stone knife, a beautifully crafted blade of obsidian bound to a wooden handle with sinew and resin. He balanced it on his palm, the firelight dancing along its deadly edge. "My grandfather made this knife," he said, "the day before white soldiers killed him." They smiled as they approached his camp, speaking of peace. By nightfall his blood soaked the ground. His eyes locked with Elizabeth's. White tongues speak sweetly, while white hearts plan death. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Chief Tall Pine raised a hand. "Enough, Black Wolf. She is here by the medicine man's vision." "Visions are not always clear," Black Wolf replied, sheathing his knife but keeping his hand on it. "Sometimes what appears as a blessing is a curse in disguise." He walked away, but his words lingered like smoke in the air. The gathering dispersed soon after, the easy atmosphere destroyed. The following morning, Elizabeth went to collect water alone, having learned the path well enough. As she filled her clay bowl at the stream, a shadow fell across her. Black Wolf stood nearby, his stone knife now removed from its sheath and held casually in his hand. "You should not wander alone," he said in broken English. "Dangerous." Elizabeth straightened, fighting the urge to step back. "The stream is within the canyon. What danger is there?" "Some dangers come from within." He used the knife to carve a sliver from a piece of wood he carried, the blade's edge catching sunlight. "Swift Fox is blinded by your pale skin and yellow hair. Others are not so foolish." "I mean no harm to anyone here," Elizabeth said firmly. Despite her racing heart, Black Wolf's laugh held no humor. "What you mean and what you bring may be different things." He pointed the knife toward the canyon entrance. "Already, more white men are seen near our hunting grounds. Soldiers. Do they search for you, I wonder?" Elizabeth's blood ran cold. "No one would search for me. I was cast out." "So you say?" Black Wolf stepped closer. "I watch you, white woman. One wrong move, one sign you bring danger to my people." He left the threat unspoken, the stone knife. Completing his meaning, Swift Fox's voice cut through the tension. "The council seeks you, Black Wolf." Elizabeth hadn't heard him approach. Black Wolf's expression darkened, but he nodded curtly and departed, sheathing his knife with deliberate slowness. "Did he threaten you?" Swift Fox asked when they were alone. "He fears I'll bring harm to the Apache," Elizabeth answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Perhaps he's right to worry. My presence here is unnatural." Swift Fox shook his head. "Black Wolf carries old wounds. His father and grandfather both died at White Hands. But White Hawk's vision is respected by all. Even Black Wolf would not defy it openly." Elizabeth gathered her courage. "He mentioned soldiers near your hunting grounds. Is that true?" A shadow crossed Swift Fox's face. "Yes. More white men move through the valleys below. We stay hidden, but—" He hesitated. "Some fear your disappearance has brought them searching." "If they are searching, it's not for me," Elizabeth said with certainty. "No one would spend resources finding a dishonored woman." Swift Fox studied her face. One day you will tell me the full truth of why your people abandoned you. One day, she agreed, knowing that moment would either strengthen or destroy the fragile trust between them. Before dawn one morning, morning sky woke Elizabeth with a gentle touch. "Come," she whispered. "Special day." They left the sleeping village. Morning sky carrying a small bundle wrapped in rabbit skin. They followed a narrow path that wound deeper into the canyon, beyond where Elizabeth had ventured before. The trail climbed steadily upward, requiring careful footing in the pre-dawn darkness. "Where are we going?" Elizabeth asked, breathless from the ascent. "Sacred place," Morning Sky replied. "Woman's place." After nearly an hour of climbing, they reached a small plateau. The eastern sky had begun to lighten, silhouetting the distant mountains. Morning Sky led Elizabeth to what appeared to be a crack in the cliff face. Slipping sideways through the narrow opening, they entered a hidden grotto. Elizabeth gasped. A clear pool filled most of the cave, its surface steaming slightly in the cool morning air. The walls glittered with mineral deposits, and a small opening in the ceiling allowed a shaft of early light to penetrate the darkness. "Healing waters," Morning Sky explained, unwrapping her bundle to reveal a collection of dried plants, roots and flowers, a sacred herb bundle. "For women, for pain here," she touched her heart, and here she touched her abdomen. Elizabeth understood. This was a place for women's healing, physical and spiritual. "Remove clothes," Morning Sky instructed. "Enter water slowly." Though initially self-conscious, Elizabeth obeyed. The cave felt separated from the ordinary world, a place where normal rules suspended. As she slipped into the warm mineral water, a sense of profound relaxation spread through her body. Morning Sky knelt by the pool's edge, crushing herbs between her palms and sprinkling them onto the water's surface. The air filled with earthy, sweet aromas. She began to sing softly, an ancient melody that seemed as old as the mountains themselves. "Close eyes," she told Elizabeth. "Let water take pain." Elizabeth closed her eyes, surrendering to the warmth and the gentle cadence of morning. Sky's song. Something shifted within her, a dam breaking. Tears came suddenly, unstoppable. All the grief, shame and fear she'd suppressed since her banishment poured out in racking sobs. Morning Sky made no move to quiet her. Instead, she continued singing, occasionally adding more herbs to the water. The cave held Elizabeth's cries, absorbing them into its ancient stone. When the tears finally subsided, Elizabeth felt hollowed out, but somehow lighter. Morning Sky helped her from the pool and wrapped her in a soft deerskin cloth. "Now you speak," the old woman said, settling beside her. "Tell water your story. I listen, but words not for me, words for healing." In that sacred space, Elizabeth found herself telling everything. The assault by Reverend Clark, her silent suffering, the disastrous wedding night, the public humiliation, her father's failure to defend her. The words poured out like the tears before them, unstoppable and cleansing. Morning Sky listened without interruption. When Elizabeth finally fell silent, the old woman took her hands. "Men can break body," she said gravely, "but spirit," she tapped Elizabeth's chest. "Spirit strong like juniper, bend not break." She reached for the herb bundle, selecting several dried flowers that she placed in Elizabeth's palm. Medicine for women's pain, for moon time, for birth time, for heart time. You learn to use. The morning light had strengthened, illuminating the pool with golden radiance. Morning Sky gestured toward it. "Water knows your truth now. Water never forgets. When pain returns, remember water holds story." As they prepared to leave, Elizabeth felt something she hadn't experienced since before her ordeal. A sense of possibility. The shame remained, but its power had diminished, washed away by tears and truth in this hidden sanctuary. That night, Elizabeth dreamed of swimming in the sacred pool, diving deep into its waters. In the dream, she emerged not as herself, but as a woman with features, both white and Apache, moving confidently between two worlds. When she woke, the sacred herbs morning sky had given her remained clutched in her hand, their fragrance a reminder of the healing waters and the words spoken there. White Hawk noticed the change in her when she brought him fresh water the following day. "You have visited the women's pool," he observed. "The waters have begun their work." Elizabeth nodded, touching the small pouch at her waist, where she now kept the sacred herbs. "Morning sky has shown me great kindness." "Not kindness," White Hawk corrected. "Recognition. She sees in you what the waters revealed, a healer's spirit." As the full moon approached, Elizabeth's place in the Apache community gradually shifted. The women began including her in their daily activities, without Morning Sky's prompting. She learned to grind mesquite pods into flour, to prepare prickly pear fruit without getting pierced by the tiny spines, and to recognize dozens of useful plants in the canyon's varied terrain. One afternoon, while gathering clay from a special deposit near the stream, Elizabeth noticed something protruding from the bank, a fragment of pottery unlike the current Apache wares. She carefully extracted the painted pottery shard, brushing away the damp soil. Its surface bore intricate geometric patterns in faded red, black, and white. "What have you found?" Swift Fox asked, approaching with a freshly killed rabbit slung. Over his shoulder, Elizabeth showed him the pottery piece. "It's different from your people's work." Swift Fox examined it with interest. "This is very old, from the ancient ones who lived in these canyons before the Apache." "Other people lived here before you?" Elizabeth asked, surprised. Swift Fox nodded. "The ancient ones built dwellings high in the cliffs. They vanished long ago, but their spirits remain." White Hawk would know more. Later, she brought the shard to the medicine man. White Hawk held it in his weathered hands, turning it to catch the light. "The people before," he confirmed. "They understood the language of rain and corn. Their hands created beauty even in useful things." He traced the patterns with a finger. "This design speaks of water and life, precious things in desert lands." "Why did they leave?" Elizabeth asked. "The old stories say a great drought came. Others say enemies drove them north, perhaps both." White Hawk returned the shard to her. "Keep this. It will remind you that all peoples face hardship. All must adapt or perish." Elizabeth placed the ancient fragment in her growing collection of treasures, the clay bowl, the juniper branch, the bone needle, and now this link to those who had sought survival in these same canyons generations before. The following day, Swift Fox offered to teach her to ride. The Apache horses, smaller and hardier than the settlement's draft animals, moved with remarkable agility. "Hold the mane here," Swift Fox instructed, helping Elizabeth onto a gentle mare. "Your legs tell her what to do more than your hands." Elizabeth's first attempts were awkward, but by day's end she had mastered the basics. The sensation of moving as one with the horse filled her with unexpected joy. From horseback, the canyon revealed new perspectives: hidden pathways, secluded meadows, ancient pictographs high on inaccessible walls. Evening brought another milestone. As the community gathered for the nightly storytelling, a space was made for Elizabeth within the women's circle, rather than at its periphery. Morning Sky nodded approval at this subtle but significant change in status. The tales that night spoke of coyotes' tricks and eagles' wisdom, though Elizabeth still struggled. With the language, she found herself understanding more, catching meanings if not every word. When laughter rippled through the gathering at Coyote's misadventures, she laughed too, no longer separated by incomprehension. After the stories, an elderly man began a song, soon joined by others. The melody rose and fell like the canyon winds. Without prompting, Morning Sky leaned close to translate. "Song of the people," she whispered. "About how Apache came to these lands long ago, following visions of mountains that touched the sky." As voices blended in ancient harmony, Elizabeth felt a profound connection to this place and these people who had rescued her from certain death. The painted pottery shard in her pouch seemed to pulse with significance, a reminder that survival often meant leaving one life behind to begin another. Later, as she prepared for sleep in Morning Sky's dwelling, Elizabeth noticed the old woman watching her with thoughtful eyes. "Tomorrow you join Women's Weaving Circle," Morning Sky announced. "They ask for you." The invitation represented acceptance beyond mere tolerance. "I'm honored," Elizabeth replied, understanding the significance. Morning Sky nodded, satisfied. "You learn quickly. Good hands, good mind." She paused, adding with characteristic directness, "Swift Fox watches you with man's eyes now, not just kind eyes." Elizabeth felt her cheeks warm, but didn't deny the observation. Her own awareness of the young hunter had grown beyond gratitude into something more complicated and tender. "The moon will be full in 3 days," Morning Sky reminded her. "Council will speak of your place here." Her eyes, still sharp despite her years, held Elizabeth's gaze. "Your heart must be certain of what it wants." The day before the full moon, Swift Fox appeared at Morning Sky's dwelling shortly after dawn. "I will show you hunting trails today," he told Elizabeth, his usually confident manner tinged with an uncharacteristic nervousness. Morning Sky gave Elizabeth a knowing look, but merely nodded her approval. "Learn well," she said. "Hunter's knowledge is life knowledge." They set out on horseback, climbing switchback trails that led to the high mesa above the canyon. Elizabeth had grown comfortable on horseback, her body finding its natural balance with the animal's movements. The mare she rode seemed to sense her increased confidence, responding eagerly to subtle shifts in weight and pressure. When they reached the plateau, Swift Fox dismounted and motioned for Elizabeth to do the same. "To hunt is to read the land," he explained, crouching to examine marks in the dusty soil. "See here, deer passed at dawn, 2 females and a young male." Elizabeth knelt beside him, studying the tracks. What had first appeared as random disturbances in the earth now revealed themselves as distinct prints, each telling a story of the animal's size, direction, and purpose. "How can you tell it was dawn?" she asked. Swift Fox pointed to the tracks. "Edges. Wind fills tracks slowly. These are still sharp, but have small drift. Dawn tracks, not night tracks." He rose and moved forward, teaching her to recognize subtle signs. Broken twigs, disturbed stones, tufts of hair caught on branches. "You must think like deer to find deer," he advised. "Where would you go for water, for shade, for tender plants?" They followed the trail for nearly a mile, moving quietly through juniper and pinon pine. Swift Fox occasionally touched her arm to point out signs she might have missed. A half-eaten leaf, droppings, a place where the deer had stopped to listen. For danger. In a small clearing he stopped and reached into his pouch. "I have something for you," he said, his usual assurance momentarily faltering. It is tradition when a hunter wishes to show respect. From the pouch, he withdrew a small carving made from deer antler. About the length of her palm, it depicted an eagle in flight, its wings outspread, every feather intricately detailed despite the hard medium. "I made this when I was 15, Swift Fox explained. "After my first successful hunt, the eagle watched over me that day, just as one watched over you in the desert." Elizabeth accepted the carving, running her fingertips over its polished surface. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, showing both artistic talent and immense patience. "It's beautiful," she said softly, "but surely this is too precious to give away." Swift Fox shook his head. "It has waited for the right hands." His fingers brushed hers as she held the carving, the contact brief but electric. "The council meets tomorrow. Whatever they decide about your place among us, I wanted you to have this." Understanding dawned on Elizabeth. This was more than a gift. It was a declaration of intent, a way of showing his feelings within the bounds of Apache custom. "Thank you," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "I will treasure it." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken words. Swift Fox reached out slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished, and touched her cheek. With gentle fingers, the scar that ran down his face seemed to fade as his expression softened. "Your spirit called to mine from the first," he said quietly. "Not your pale skin or yellow hair, as Black Wolf believes. Your courage in the face of great pain." Elizabeth's heart thundered in her chest. Part of her wanted to pull away, to protect herself from further hurt. But another part, growing stronger each day, urged her toward this connection that promised healing rather than harm. She leaned slightly into his touch, a small movement, but unmistakable in its meaning. Swift Fox's breath caught and he moved closer, his intention clear. Well, this explains much. Black Wolf's voice cut through the moment like a knife. He stood at the edge of the clearing, his stone knife prominently displayed at his belt, his expression cold with contempt. "The council searches for you, Swift Fox," he said. "They wish to hear your thoughts on the white woman's place among us." His emphasis made the word thoughts an accusation. "I see your thoughts are already decided." Swift Fox straightened, his hand falling away from Elizabeth's face, but his stance protective. "I will speak truth to the council, as always." "Truth?" Black Wolf's laugh held no humor. "What truth can exist between Apache and white skin? She bewitches you with false softness while her people prepare to hunt us like animals." The council meeting never took place as planned. As dawn broke on the day of the full moon, scouts returned to the village with urgent news. A raiding party from a rival tribe had been spotted approaching the canyon's hidden entrance. The village erupted into controlled chaos. Warriors collected weapons, while women gathered children and essential supplies, ready to retreat deeper into the canyon if necessary. Elizabeth found herself helping Morning Sky secure her dwelling, uncertain of her role in this crisis. "Comanche," Morning Sky explained tersely. "Old enemies, come for horses, maybe captives." Chief Tall Pine organized the defense. Positioning warriors strategically throughout the canyon's narrow entrance. Elizabeth noticed Swift Fox among them, his face painted with red and black stripes, a short bow and quiver of arrows slung across his back. From her position near Morning Sky's dwelling, Elizabeth watched as White Hawk performed a hasty blessing over the defenders. The atmosphere was tense but disciplined. This was clearly not the first such raid the Apache had faced. A young scout rushed into the village, breathless with urgency. He spoke rapidly to the chief, gesturing toward the canyon entrance. Elizabeth couldn't understand his words, but his agitation was clear. Morning Sky translated grimly, "Comanche have new weapons. White man's guns." Elizabeth's blood ran cold. The settlers' rifles would give the raiders a deadly advantage over bows and spears. Without thinking, she hurried toward the chief's gathering. "I know about those weapons," she said. "I can help." The chief regarded her with surprise, while Black Wolf's expression darkened with suspicion. "How would you help?" the chief asked. "Through a translator. Rifles must be reloaded after each shot," Elizabeth explained quickly. "There is a moment of vulnerability, and they are less accurate from horseback than bows at close range." White Hawk nodded slowly. "She speaks truth. My father told of these weapons' weaknesses." The chief made a swift decision. "Tell us what you know." Elizabeth described the loading process, the effective range, how to recognize when a rifle was empty. The Apache warriors listened intently, their initial skepticism giving way to strategic calculation. Swift Fox approached her when the council dispersed. "Your knowledge may save lives today," he said. "Thank you." Before she could respond, the first warning calls echoed through the canyon. The raiders had arrived. What followed was a blur of tension and noise. The Apache defenders used the canyon's natural choke points to ambush the incoming raiders, employing Elizabeth's advice to attack during reloading moments. She watched anxiously from a sheltered position where Morning Sky had insisted she remain. Through swirls of dust and confusion, Elizabeth spotted Swift Fox engaged with a mounted raider. The Comanche warrior raised a rifle, but Swift Fox dodged at the crucial moment, the shot splintering rock instead of flesh. As the raider struggled to reload, Swift Fox loosed an arrow that found its mark. The Comanche raider fell, his rifle clattering uselessly to the ground, but a second raider charged from behind, swinging a war club. Elizabeth cried out a warning, but her voice was lost in the din of battle. The club caught Swift Fox across the shoulder, sending him sprawling. The raider dismounted, drawing a knife for the killing blow. Without conscious thought, Elizabeth grabbed a fallen bow. Years of archery practice at the settlement, one of the few activities her father had insisted upon, guided her hands. The arrow flew true, striking the raider's arm. It wasn't a killing shot, but it was enough to make him howl in pain and retreat. Swift Fox recovered quickly, finishing what Elizabeth had begun. When the brief but fierce battle ended, the surviving raiders fled, leaving behind dead and wounded. Among the items recovered from the fallen was a warrior's headband, an intricate piece of woven cloth and beadwork with a single eagle feather attached. Swift Fox brought it to Elizabeth as the village regrouped. "This belonged to the one who would have killed me," he said, his face solemn. "You saved my life." Elizabeth accepted the headband with trembling hands. "I couldn't let him hurt you." Swift Fox had a deep gash on his temple that was beginning to swell. Without thinking, Elizabeth tore a strip from her skirt to bind the wound. As she worked, she became aware of eyes watching them, including Black Wolf's calculating gaze and White Hawk's thoughtful observation. "The white woman fights for Apache," someone murmured in the crowd. The words spread, shifting perceptions even among those who had doubted her. Chief Tallpine approached, his expression grave but respectful. "You have warrior's eyes," he said simply. "Tonight, when wounds are tended and the dead honored, we will speak of your place among us." In the aftermath of the raid, Elizabeth found herself tending to the wounded alongside Morning Sky. Her knowledge of settler medicine complemented the Apache healing practices, earning grudging respect even from those who had previously avoided. Her Swift Fox's injuries were not life-threatening, but the blow to his shoulder had been severe. As Elizabeth applied a poultice of crushed herbs to his temple wound, he drifted in and out of consciousness, murmuring in Apache. "He speaks of you," Morning Sky translated, her weathered hands preparing more medicine. "He says the eagle brought him a woman of two worlds." Elizabeth's cheeks warmed. She focused on cleaning the wound, trying to ignore the watching eyes of other tribe members who passed by the healing lodge. When night fell and most of the wounded were resting, Elizabeth remained by Swift Fox's side. In the quiet darkness, with only a small fire for light, he finally opened his eyes fully, recognition dawning. "You shot the Comanche," he said, his voice hoarse. Elizabeth nodded. "My father insisted I learn archery. It was the one thing he taught me after my mother died." Swift Fox tried to sit up, but winced with pain. Elizabeth gently pressed him back down. "Your secret," he said after a moment. "The one your people cast you out for. I would know it now." Elizabeth's heart pounded. The moment had come sooner than she expected. She reached into the small pouch she always carried and withdrew her silver locket. Opening it revealed not only her mother's portrait, but something hidden behind it, a torn page from a Bible, folded many times to fit the tiny space. "I kept this when they took everything else," she explained, unfolding the delicate paper. "It's from the book of John, about the woman they wanted to stone for adultery. Jesus said, 'Let him who is without sin cast the first stone.'" Swift Fox looked confused. "This paper gave you comfort?" "These words did," Elizabeth clarified, "because I knew what happened to me wasn't my sin, but another's." She took a deep breath. 6 months before my wedding, our settlement's religious leader attacked me. He took what wasn't freely given. Understanding dawned in Swift Fox's eyes. He forced you. Elizabeth nodded, the shame she thought she'd released at the healing pool threatening to return. When my husband discovered I wasn't untouched on our wedding night, I was publicly disgraced. No one believed me when I tried to name my attacker. They said I was making excuses for my own sinfulness. Swift Fox's hand found hers in the firelight. Among Apache, such a man would face justice. The shame would be his, not yours. My father didn't even defend me, Elizabeth continued, the words flowing now that she had begun. He just stood there, silent. They stripped me of everything, my name, my future, my place in the world, and sent me into the desert to die. She hadn't realized she was crying until Swift Fox reached up to brush a tear from her cheek, his touch infinitely gentle despite his warrior's calluses. "The desert did not take you," he said. "The eagle led you to us." He hesitated, then added, "To me." From the entrance of the healing lodge came White Hawk's voice. "Now I understand the vision completely." Elizabeth turned, startled. The medicine. Man stood in the doorway, his expression solemn but kind. "You heard?" she asked, hastily wiping her tears. "I heard truth spoken from a strong heart," he replied. "A heart that has been tested like gold in fire." He moved into the lodge, settling beside them. "The spirits did not bring you to us by chance, daughter of the juniper. They brought you because here among the Apache you could find what your own people denied you. Justice and understanding." Swift Fox struggled again to sit up, this time succeeding with Elizabeth's help. "I would speak before the council tomorrow," he declared. "I would ask for her to be accepted fully among us, not as a white woman we tolerate, but as one of the people." White Hawk nodded slowly. "I will support this request." His eyes met Elizabeth's. "But the choice must be hers. To be of the people is to leave behind the white world completely." Elizabeth looked down at the torn Bible page in her hand, her last connection to the faith that had condemned her. Then she gazed at Swift Fox, whose eyes held no judgment, only acceptance. "My old world cast me out," she said quietly. "Perhaps it was leading me to where I truly belong." The tribal council convened at sunset the following day. Elizabeth had spent the intervening hours helping tend the wounded and preparing herself for whatever judgment would come. Morning Sky had dressed her in a special deerskin dress, adorned with simple beadwork, not quite Apache in design, but no longer settler clothing either. A visual representation of her in-between status. The entire tribe gathered in the central clearing. At the center sat the council members, Chief Tall Pine, White Hawk, and the eldest warriors and clan mothers. Elizabeth was directed to sit opposite them, alone, but visible to all. The chief began by lifting an intricately carved wooden rod decorated with eagle feathers, turquoise beads and symbols etched into its surface. The talking stick, a sacred object that gave its holder the right to speak without interruption. "We gathered to decide the place of the one called Daughter of the Juniper," the chief announced, his words translated for Elizabeth. "She came to us as a stranger, brought by the eagle's guidance. Now we must determine if she remains as one of the people or returns to her own kind." He passed the talking stick to White Hawk, who spoke of his vision and how Elizabeth's presence had fulfilled it. "The spirits led her to us for a purpose," he concluded. "She has begun to walk the path they intended, learning our ways with a humble heart." The stick passed next to a clan mother who had overseen Elizabeth's work with the women. "Her hands are skillful and her mind quick," the elder woman testified. "She respects our traditions and does not try to change them to her ways." Morning Sky spoke of Elizabeth's character, of her willingness to learn and adapt. "She carries deep wounds," the old woman said, "yet she does not let them poison her spirit." Not all voices were supportive. When the talking stick reached Black Wolf, his words were sharp with warning. "She fought against the Comanche, yes," he acknowledged. "But what of the day her own people come seeking her? Where will her loyalty lie then? The white soldiers move closer to our lands each season. Can we trust her not to betray our hidden canyon when faced with her own kind? Several council members nodded at this practical concern. Swift Fox, his arm bound but his voice strong, took the talking stick next. I would speak not just as a warrior who owes her his life, but as a man who has looked into her heart. His declaration caused murmurs throughout the gathering. She was wounded by her own people more deeply than any enemy arrow. They cast her out to die. Why would she hold loyalty to those who showed her none? The debate continued as the talking stick moved from hand to hand. Elizabeth listened, understanding most words now, but still relying on occasional translations. Finally, the stick returned to Chief Tall Pine, who addressed her directly. "Daughter of the juniper, you have heard our thoughts. Now we would hear yours. Why should you become one of the people?" The talking stick was placed in her hands. Its weight felt significant, a physical manifestation of the moment's importance. Elizabeth rose, following the protocol she had observed. "I came to you broken," she began, speaking slowly in her improving Apache, then switching to English when the words became too complex. "You could have left me to die, as my own people intended. Instead, you offered healing and taught me a different way to live with honor and truth." She touched the juniper branch talisman at her neck. "In the settler world, I was judged by one moment of violence done to me, not by my character or spirit. Among you, I have been judged by my actions and my willingness to learn. Here, I have found respect I never knew." She glanced briefly at Swift Fox, "and connections I never expected." Holding the talking stick firmly, she concluded, "I cannot undo the color of my skin or change where I was born, but I can choose where I belong. I ask to stay among you, to continue learning your ways, and to contribute to the tribe that saved. Not just my life, but my spirit." She returned the talking stick to the chief and resumed her seat, heart pounding. Chief Tall Pine conferred quietly with the other council members. The gathering waited in tense silence. Finally, he stood. "Daughter of the juniper will remain among us," he announced. "But to truly become one of the people, she must complete the vision quest. Only then can her place be permanent." A collective exhalation moved through the assembly. Elizabeth caught Swift Fox's eye across the clearing, his relief matching her. "Own, the quest begins tomorrow at dawn," the chief continued. "White Hawk will prepare you. Tonight, rest and consider the path ahead, for once begun, there is no returning to what was before." Dawn found Elizabeth at the entrance to White Hawk's dwelling, her heart alternating between determination and apprehension. The medicine man welcomed her inside, where various preparations were already laid out. Bundles of herbs, small carved stones, feathers, and a small fire burning with sweet-smelling wood. "The vision quest is not undertaken lightly," White Hawk began, motioning for her to sit across from him. "It is the journey where a soul meets itself truly, stripped of all pretense." Elizabeth nodded, watching as his gnarled fingers sorted through items with practiced precision. "You will go alone to the sacred mountain," he continued. "For 2 days and nights you will neither eat nor drink. The body's weakness opens the spirit to visions." "What should I look for in these visions?" Elizabeth asked, White Hawk's eyes, still sharp despite his years, fixed on hers. "You do not find visions. They find you. Listen more than you speak. Watch more than you move." He began mixing herbs in a small stone bowl. "These will help your mind open to the spirits." Throughout the morning, White Hawk instructed Elizabeth in the rituals and protocols of the vision quest. She learned the sacred songs to sing at sunset and dawn, the proper way to create a small stone circle for protection, and how to recognize signs from the natural world. "Animals that approach may carry messages," he explained. "The snake brings transformation, the deer, gentleness, the eagle, connection to the Creator." Midday brought a purification ceremony. Elizabeth sat in a small sweat lodge with Morning, Sky, and the female elders, their bodies wrapped in light cloth as heated stones created steam that cleansed both body and spirit. The women sang songs of strength and endurance that Elizabeth tried to memorize, their voices blending in ancient harmony. When she emerged, feeling lighter and somehow more present in her own skin, Swift Fox waited nearby. His wounded arm was still bound, but he stood straight and strong. "I would speak with you before your journey," he requested formally. They walked to a quiet spot overlooking the stream. For a moment neither spoke, the sound of running water filling the silence. "The vision quest changed me when I was 16, Swift Fox finally said. "I went seeking glory in battle. Instead, I was shown a path of wisdom and protection." He touched the scar on his face unconsciously. "Not all visions are gentle, but all are true if we have the courage to see them." Elizabeth felt the weight of what lay ahead. "What if I fail? What if no vision comes?" "The vision always comes," he assured her. "But recognizing it takes an open heart." He hesitated, then reached for her hand. "When you return, if the spirits are willing, I would speak to the council about joining our paths." The implication was clear. He was proposing marriage, contingent on her successful integration into the tribe. Elizabeth's heart seemed to expand in her chest, joy mingling with fear of all that could still go wrong. "I would welcome that conversation," she replied softly. Their fingers intertwined briefly before they returned to the village, where final preparations awaited. As the day waned, Whitehawk presented Elizabeth with a small deerskin pouch decorated with porcupine quills in geometric patterns. A leather cord allowed it to be worn around the neck. "Your medicine pouch," he explained, placing various items inside it one by one. Eagle feather for vision, stone from the sacred spring for strength, juniper berries for protection, tobacco for offering to the spirits. The last item was a small amount of reddish powder. "This is sacred. When the second sunset comes, mix with water and drink. It will help the final vision come clearly." He tied the pouch around her neck. "Whatever you see, remember it exactly. Do not fight the visions, even if they bring pain or fear. The truth they show is needed for your path forward." As the sun began its descent, the tribe gathered to witness Elizabeth's departure. She had been dressed in a simple white buckskin outfit, her hair bound with a plain leather cord, feet protected by moccasins made specially by morning sky. Chief Tall Pine blessed her journey with sacred smoke. Swift Fox stood silently nearby, his eyes never leaving her face. Black Wolf watched with an unreadable expression, not hostile, but not supportive either. Whitehawk led Elizabeth to the canyon's edge, pointing to a distinctive peak in the distance. "The Mountain of Visions awaits. Return when the third sun rises. If the spirits accept you, you will not be the same woman who leaves us now." Elizabeth touched the medicine pouch at her throat, drawing courage from its presence. As she took her first steps away from the village, alone for the first time since her rescue, the eagle that had followed her journey appeared overhead, circling once before flying toward the mountain. "The guardian shows the way," Whitehawk observed. "Go now, and may your spirit find its true name." The journey to the sacred mountain took most of the day. Elizabeth followed game trails through juniper forests and across rocky plateaus, the distant peak growing ever larger. By late afternoon, she reached the designated site, a natural shelf of rock overlooking the vastness of the desert, with the Apache Canyon barely visible in the distance. Following Whitehawk's instructions, she gathered stones to form a circle large enough to sit within. Inside this boundary, she would remain for 2 days and nights, leaving only for the most essential needs. As the first sunset approached, Elizabeth sang the evening song she had been taught, her voice sounding small against the immensity of the landscape. The wind carried her words away, but she continued faithfully, completing the ritual before settling into cross-legged silence. Night fell swiftly in the desert, Stars emerged in overwhelming numbers, more than Elizabeth had ever seen. From the settlement with its obscuring lamplights, the Milky Way stretched across the sky like a great white river. Despite her empty stomach and the growing chill, a sense of peace settled over her. Sleep came in fitful bursts, punctuated by moments of complete wakefulness when every sound, the cry of a night bird, the distant howl of a coyote, seemed magnified and significant. By dawn, Elizabeth's perception had already begun to shift, ordinary sensations taking on new intensity. She performed the morning ritual as the sun broke over the eastern horizon, her parched throat making the song raspy but determined. The day stretched before her, long and empty by design. This emptiness, Whitehawk had explained, was necessary. Only when usual distractions were removed could deeper awareness emerge. From her medicine pouch, Elizabeth withdrew a small object. Whitehawk had added at the last moment a polished piece of obsidian, its black surface reflecting light like dark water. "Look into it when the sun is highest," he had instructed. "See beyond your reflection to what lies beneath." As noon approached, Elizabeth held the obsidian mirror in her palm, angling it to catch the sunlight. At first, she saw only her own face, transformed by weeks among the Apache, skin darkened by the sun, features leaner from their diet and lifestyle. But as she continued gazing, the reflection seemed to shift and waver. She saw herself as she had been in the settlement. Then, as she might become years hence, her face lined with experience but eyes serene. The visions came more rapidly. Her mother's face, swift fox with children by his side, herself standing between white soldiers and the Apache village. Dizziness overcame her, whether from hunger, thirst, or the intensity of the visions, she couldn't tell. She carefully returned the obsidian mirror to her medicine pouch, sensing its power was not to be used lightly. The afternoon brought physical discomfort as the sun beat down on her exposed position. Thirst became a constant companion, her lips cracking in the dry air. Elizabeth focused on her breathing, using techniques morning sky had taught to manage pain and distress. By the second sunset, hallucinations began to blur the line between reality and vision. Clouds took the shapes of familiar faces. Rocks seemed to shift and breathe. The juniper trees whispered in voices almost comprehensible. Following Whitehawk's instructions, she mixed the red powder from her medicine pouch with a few drops of dew she had collected on a leaf in the early morning. The bitter liquid was barely enough to moisten her tongue, but its effect was profound and immediate. The world around her intensified, colors becoming almost painfully vibrant as the stars appeared. The boundary between Elizabeth and her surroundings seemed to dissolve, as if her consciousness expanded beyond her physical form. In this altered state, the eagle appeared, not circling overhead as before, but landing directly before her stone circle. In her vision, the bird transformed, taking the form of a woman in white buckskin who looked remarkably like Elizabeth's mother. "You stand between worlds," the eagle woman said, her voice both familiar and otherworldly. "Not fully of either, but necessary to both." "What is my purpose?" Elizabeth asked, unsure if she spoke aloud or only in her mind. "To be the bridge," came the answer. "To carry understanding where there has been only fear. To heal wounds on both sides of the divide." The eagle woman approached the stone boundary, but did not cross it. "You must choose your path with open eyes. The easier road is not your road." "I'm afraid," Elizabeth admitted. "Fear is the shadow of courage," the eagle woman replied. "Both will be your companions in the days ahead." As suddenly as it had appeared, the vision vanished, leaving Elizabeth alone under the vast star field. She wept then, though her body had little moisture to spare for tears, not from sorrow, but from a profound sense of connection to something larger than herself. Through the long night, more visions came, some beautiful, others disturbing. She saw the settlement in flames, Swift Fox wounded, herself standing before a military officer whose face remained shadowed. She witnessed children of mixed blood running through the canyon, heard songs blending Apache rhythms with settler hymns. By dawn of the third day, Elizabeth understood what she must become. Elizabeth descended from the mountain as the third dawn broke, her body weakened, but her spirit vibrant with purpose. The journey back to the canyon took longer than her outward path had, each step deliberate as she integrated the visions that had transformed her understanding of herself and her place in the world. At the canyon's entrance, Whitehawk waited, alone, as if he had known the exact moment of her return. His aged eyes studied her face, recognizing the change that had occurred. "You have seen," he stated simply. Elizabeth nodded. "I have seen." He offered her a small water skin. "Drink slowly. The body must return gently." The cool water felt miraculous on her parched lips. She sipped carefully as Whitehawk had instructed, allowing her dehydrated body to readjust gradually. "The Eagle Woman spoke to me," Elizabeth said, when she could speak comfortably again. "She told me I must be a bridge between worlds." Whitehawk nodded, unsurprised. "The guardian spirit often takes the form of one who has walked before us. This Eagle Woman, she was known to you. She appeared as my mother," Elizabeth confirmed, "but also somehow as myself. The ancestor and the descendant joined in purpose," Whitehawk mused. "A powerful vision." He gestured for her to follow him. "Come, the people await your return." At the village's edge, Morning Sky met them with a bundle wrapped in red cloth. "For the ceremony," she explained, her eyes warm with approval as she assessed Elizabeth's condition. They led her to Morning Sky's dwelling, where a bath had been prepared with aromatic herbs. As Elizabeth washed away the dust of her journey, Morning Sky unwrapped the bundle to reveal a dress unlike any Elizabeth had seen before. White buckskin, softer than seemed possible, decorated with subtle beadwork in patterns that echoed the geometry of the ancient pottery shards she had found. "Made for you," Morning Sky explained as she helped Elizabeth into the garment. "Many women worked while you were on the mountain, white for new beginning." The dress fit perfectly, confirming that the women had been planning this moment since. Before the council's decision, it symbolized acceptance more profound than words could express. Hours of skilled labor invested in welcoming her into their community. When Elizabeth emerged from the dwelling, the entire tribe had gathered in the central clearing. She walked toward them with a steady pace, conscious of how different she felt from the broken bride who had collapsed at their borders months earlier. Swift Fox stood near the front of the assembly, his face alight with pride and something deeper. Beside him, surprisingly, stood Black Wolf, his usual hostility replaced by cautious respect. Chief Tall Pine and Whitehawk conducted the ceremony in Apache, with occasional translations for Elizabeth's benefit. Whitehawk asked her to share what vision had come to her on the mountain. Speaking clearly, despite her still raspy voice, Elizabeth described the Eagle Woman and the message about becoming a bridge between worlds. She spoke of seeing herself, standing between the Apache and those who would harm them, of children with mixed heritage running through the canyon, of songs that blended different traditions. "The vision shows what may be, not what must be," Whitehawk reminded the gathering, "but the spirits have revealed a path of connection rather than division." Chief Tall Pine stepped forward with a ceramic bowl of red ochre. With his fingertip, he traced a symbol on Elizabeth's forehead, the mark of acceptance into the tribe. "From this day," he proclaimed, "you are no longer just daughter of the juniper, but walks between worlds. Your place among the people is recognized by all." The formality of the moment broke as the tribe erupted in celebration. Children who had once been shy now rushed to touch Elizabeth's white buckskin dress for luck. Women who had helped create it beamed with satisfaction at how it embodied her new identity, honoring both her pale skin and her Apache heart. Swift Fox approached last, respectful of the many who wished to welcome her. When finally they stood face to face, words seemed inadequate. "The council has heard my request," he said quietly. "If you are willing, our paths may join when the next moon is full." Elizabeth's heart swelled with certainty. "My vision showed. Us together," she replied, "with children who will know both worlds." His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining publicly for the first time, a declaration visible to all. Even Black Wolf approached, though his expression remained guarded. "Your vision serves the people," he acknowledged. "I will watch to see if it proves true." Coming from him, this was profound acceptance. As evening fell and celebration fires were lit, Elizabeth sat among the women who had become her sisters, wearing the white buckskin dress that symbolized her rebirth. Looking around at these people who had saved not just her life but her spirit, she understood that the painful journey from broken bride to walks between worlds had been necessary, each step leading her precisely where she needed to be. 3 days before Elizabeth and Swift Fox were to be joined in marriage, scouts returned to the canyon with disturbing news. A patrol of U.S. cavalry soldiers had been spotted in the valley below, closer to the hidden canyon than any military unit had ventured before. Chief Tall Pine called the council immediately. Elizabeth, now recognized as a full member of the tribe, was included in the deliberations. Running Elk, the lead scout, placed a small metal object in the center of the circle, a brass button bearing the emblem of the U.S. cavalry, found near the soldiers' temporary camp. "They move with purpose," Running Elk reported. "Not just patrolling, searching." "How many?" asked the chief. 20 mounted soldiers. One man in black, not dressed as a soldier. He seems to lead them, though he wears no uniform. Elizabeth's blood ran cold as she studied the button. "Did you see this man in black clearly? Was he older, with white hair and a thick beard?" Running Elk nodded. His beard was white. He carried a book and pointed to the mountains often. Elizabeth's worst fears were confirmed. "Elder Willoughby," she said quietly. "My former father-in-law. He would never accept the shame of my disappearance. If I survived, it would mean the judgment against me might be questioned." Black Wolf's eyes narrowed. "You said no one would search for you." "I believed it," Elizabeth replied honestly. "I never thought they would waste resources hunting down a disgraced woman. But Elder Willoughby is obsessed with appearances and authority. If he learned I might be alive—" "How would he know?" Swift Fox asked. Elizabeth considered. "Perhaps traders brought stories of a white woman living among the Apache. Or perhaps they found evidence I didn't die in the desert." Chief Tall Pine picked up the cavalry button, turning it in his fingers. "What would these soldiers do if they found you?" "They would take me back," Elizabeth answered. "And they would consider you my captors, not my rescuers. It would give them excuse to attack the canyon." A heavy silence fell over the council. The threat was clear. Discovery of the hidden canyon could mean destruction for the Apache community that had become Elizabeth's home. "We could move deeper into the mountains," suggested one elder. "There are other canyons where the people have sheltered in times of danger." "Abandoning our homes should be the last choice," argued Black Wolf. "These are our ancestral lands." White Hawk, who had been silent until now, spoke deliberately. "Perhaps this is the moment Walks Between Worlds was meant for." The vision on the mountain showed her standing between her old people and her new people. All eyes turned to Elizabeth. The weight of expectation pressed upon her like a physical force. "I could go to them," she offered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Explain that I came here willingly, that there was no kidnapping." "They would not believe you," Swift Fox objected. "They would say we forced those words." "Or worse," Black Wolf added grimly, "they would simply kill you for choosing to live among savages, then attack us anyway." Elizabeth knew they were right. The cavalry would never accept her voluntary presence among the Apache, especially with a marriage ceremony approaching. "There is another way," she said after long consideration. "I could lead them away from the canyon, Make them believe I escaped captivity and fled in another direction. Create a false trail." Swift Fox immediately shook his head. "Too dangerous. If they caught you alone—" "Not alone," Elizabeth interrupted. "With you and perhaps one or two others who know the land best. We could draw them south toward the territories where other tribes are known to camp. By the time they realize the deception, we could return by hidden paths." The council debated this proposal intensely. Elizabeth watched the cavalry button pass from hand to hand, a small metal emblem representing the collision of worlds her vision had foretold. Finally, Chief Tall Pine spoke. "Walks between worlds and Swift Fox will lead the soldiers away from our canyon. Black Wolf, Running Elk, and 2 ravens will accompany them, ensuring safe return by secret routes. The rest of the tribe will prepare to move deeper into the mountains if necessary." Black Wolf looked at Elizabeth with new respect. "You would risk yourself to protect the people." "These are my people now," she replied simply. "My place is here." As the council dispersed to prepare, Swift Fox took Elizabeth's hand. "The joining ceremony must wait," he said regretfully. Elizabeth smiled despite the danger ahead. "We are already joined in all ways that matter. The ceremony will come when it is meant to." That night, as she prepared for the dangerous mission ahead, Elizabeth kept the cavalry button near as a reminder of what was at stake, not just her future with Swift Fox, but the survival of an entire way of life. 3 months after the cavalry had been successfully led away from the hidden canyon, the delayed wedding ceremony of Elizabeth, now known as Walks Between Worlds, and Swift Fox finally took place beneath a canopy of stars. The entire tribe gathered to witness their union, a celebration made sweeter by the recent victory and safe return. The plan had worked perfectly. Elizabeth had allowed herself to be glimpsed from a distance, appearing to flee southward. The soldiers, led by the vengeful Elder Willoughby, had followed the false trail for nearly 2 weeks before losing it completely in the more populated territories to the south. By then, Elizabeth and her Apache companions had circled back to the canyon through paths known only to the most skilled trackers. Now, as she stood beside Swift Fox in the ceremonial circle, Elizabeth wore a dress that symbolized her unique position. The left side traditional Apache buckskin, the right side patterned after settler clothing but made with indigenous materials and decorated with Apache beadwork. The most precious item in the ceremony was the woven wedding blanket that would bind them together. Created by the women of the tribe during the months of preparation, it incorporated both Apache geometric patterns and subtle elements from Elizabeth's settler background. A star pattern reminiscent of a quilt, floral motifs similar to those she had once embroidered. When Morning Sky had presented it to Elizabeth the previous day, the old woman had explained its significance. "Many hands made this. Even Black Wolf's mother wove part. It carries prayers of all the people." As White Hawk conducted the ceremony, speaking in both Apache and English, the blanket was wrapped around Elizabeth and Swift Fox, physically uniting them as their lives now would be united. The blend of traditions felt right to Elizabeth, not a rejection of either world, but a bridge between them, just as her vision had shown. After the ceremony, as celebration continued around them, Elizabeth and Swift Fox walked to the canyon's edge. The woven blanket remained draped across their shoulders, a symbol of their shared future. "The soldiers will not return," Swift Fox assured her, sensing her momentary distance. Elder Willoughby was reassigned to a fort far to the east. The scouts confirmed it. Elizabeth nodded. "I'm not afraid anymore. My path is clear now." In the months following their marriage, Elizabeth began to fulfill the purpose her vision had revealed. Drawing on her knowledge of settler medicine and the healing traditions White Hawk had begun teaching her, she established herself as a healer who could treat ailments with approaches from both worlds. Word spread cautiously of an unusual healer. In the mountain territories, Occasionally, settlers with serious illnesses or injuries would be brought to a neutral meeting place where Elizabeth would treat them, her Apache identity concealed, but her skills evident. Each successful treatment built a fragile bridge of gratitude and respect. A year after the wedding, Elizabeth's sister Rebecca found her way to one such meeting place, having never believed the story of Elizabeth's shame and death. Their reunion was tearful and healing. Through Rebecca, carefully vetted contacts were established with more open-minded settlers who sought peaceful coexistence rather than conflict. On a warm spring morning, 2 years after she had stumbled into the desert, in a tattered wedding dress, Elizabeth sat beneath the juniper tree that had given her tribal name. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, the child within active and strong. Swift Fox sat beside her, carving a small wooden toy for their coming child. Below them, in a small meadow, a remarkable scene unfolded. A group of children, some Apache, some from nearby settler families who had formed cautious alliances with the tribe, played together under morning sky's watchful eye. The elderly woman was teaching them to identify healing plants, her knowledge being passed to a new generation that might grow up without the divisions that had shaped Elizabeth's life. "Our child will know both worlds," Swift Fox said, following her gaze to the children below, "and perhaps help build a better one," Elizabeth replied, thinking of her vision on the mountain. She touched the silver locket that still hung around her neck, now keeping company with Apache amulets and medicine pouches. Inside, her mother's portrait remained, but the torn Bible page had been removed, not discarded, but carefully preserved in a special place along with the eagle feather, the clay bowl, and all the artifacts that marked her journey from Broken. A bride to walks between worlds. The canyon that had once been merely a refuge had become home. The people who had been strangers were now family. The woman who had been cast out had found her true belonging. And the future, though uncertain as all futures must be, held promise of healing old wounds between peoples who had seen each other only as enemies. Elizabeth, walks between worlds, would make certain of it.